Hi, my name's John Thorne. I'm the owner of Thorney Motorsport and here today talking about McLarens. Well, we got into McLaren tuning really personal reasons and company reasons. The first reason from a personal perspective is I wanted one. As a business owner and being in a tuning market for 20 years, we're always looking for cars that we want to get involved with and get modified and get involved in the marketplace. And by definition, we always pick cars that we like to play with. You know, as a company, we specialise in Vauxhalls, BMWs, and we wanted a high-end market and also wanted a supercar market we get involved with. Other two reasons were, secondly, it's British. You know, we're a patriotic company ourselves and British ourselves, so McLaren being a true blue British company, getting behind a British manufacturer made some sense. And the third thing was technology. If you look at the marketplace, the Ferrari tuning market is full of Ferrari tuning companies, all with long histories, etc. And it's all based on passion and history. So for us to start tuning Ferraris, we'd have to do something better than most. And there's some good companies out there. Ditto the German marks, Porsche, for example. You know, there's a lot of Porsche tuning companies. We could do a great job doing some work on them, obviously, but could we do anything better? Probably, but over time. And the fine thing is that there was no one doing McLaren tuning. So for us, the technology base is what really excites us. We're a technology company ourselves. We're engineers at heart. And the way that McLaren have come up with their business model and the products they have is astounding. So we wanted to go for something that had a technology link, the British link, and obviously from a supercar market. And the final thing is, again, a little bit selfish. We're an aftermarket tuning company. By definition, we make things work a bit harder, go a bit faster, stop a bit better. For us to pick a model or pick a car that was inherently weak or inherently had defects or issues simply means a problem lands on our doorstep. So for us, is to pick a car that we think is solid, that we think could take more and do more, and also gives the opportunity to spread what we do across several models makes some sense. Like it or not, McLaren have the same gearbox, same engine on 5 different models. It's the same chassis. There's some slight tub differences in terms of them, but generally speaking, it's the same car with different skirts on different software. So from an aftermarket point of view, the opportunity is very much there for all those things to apply. Well, as a company, our modus operandi is the same. We always buy a car that we want to tune and modify ourselves. There's all kinds of ways as a manufacturer how you learn the cars, etc. But as an independent, you have to learn from the ground up, which basically means usually taking a car and taking it apart. So for us, it was a question of we always have a car we buy ourselves, modify it, tune it, do work on it, service it, get to know them properly. Only then can we offer ourselves as an expert, independent expert for owners themselves. So for us, the question is, what do we buy? We wanted a 12C. We wanted a Spider because it gave another element of, obviously, in terms of functionality for us. And so we had a bit of a search round looking for cars. I personally test drove something like 30 or so before I got down to what the car that we actually eventually chose. Now, our company colours are black and green. So all of our company cars of all kinds are all black and green. All our BMWs are black, all of our Vauxhalls are black. So I went out looking for every black 12C Spider I could, and there's not that many. In the end, I actually went to see one at a dealer in Ascot, and they had another orange one there, which wasn't part of our plan. It's a volcano orange car, very pretty car, but we didn't even consider it, 'cause it wasn't black. But I test drove the black car. It was a bit lumpy, had a few issues with it, weren't happy with. Test drove the orange one, and then the salesman says, look, I can do the orange one for the same price. Even though it required a bit of a change of heart for us, so our McLaren tuning side is all orange and black now rather than black and green, it seemed to fit very well. And it's interesting how the cars do feel different. Driving cars, looking at these cars, you can realise I drove 5 cars in one day. I drove 5 different cars. They are subtly different in every way. And it's knowing which to look for, which is a problem, which is simply down to the character of the car. Right, well, the first thing we do when we get a car in is we get it on the ramp, we take it apart. It sounds a bit strange to buy a car, and the first thing we do is we actually tear it apart as a process. But for us, we bring the car in, we put it on 95 octane fuel, we dyno it on our dyno cell, then we run it again and put it on higher octane fuel, dyno it again to see what power it's giving the standard car, and then we take it apart. And literally it's down to the bare tub. Quite interesting for us. Obviously, McLaren has this image and what it presents to the marketplace as being technically very sophisticated. And we have stories where owners have been told not to check their tyre pressures because they're so sophisticated, only a dealer can do it. These are still cars in the day, 4 wheels, motor, engine, a few seats. And to have that mentality is what you need to have in this marketplace. Now, for us, we have a long history with Vauxhall and the VX220. We were the technical experts for General Motors for it. We built a long racing career with it, etc. That car's now moved on, but we still have them here. And strangely enough, the day we came back with our 12C, we had 2 VX20s here on ramps, or in various states of distress. One was being a complete rebuild. Now, depressingly for some McLaren owners think they have something that's a very exotic Ferrari type history. The 12C and all the McLaren range, similarities with the Lotus S2 or the VX220 from our perspective are very, very similar. When I say similar, they're identical. The way the rear tub attaches to the front, the rear subframe attaches to the front, to the main tub, the way the front subframe attaches, the way the wiring goes, the design suspension, the wishbone suspension, you could almost mirror image from a VX220 as we did from one ramp to a 12C another. The materials are more exotic, obviously. The design is better, the cooling is better, the technology is more sophisticated electronically, obviously. But generally speaking, it's a transition. Now, I asked McLaren the similarities between these, and I was expecting a bit of a brusque response. And the response was, well, not surprising, John. There's a 9-man team designed the 12C and the whole process. 7 of them were ex-Lotus. So the similarities are quite strong. But for us, it's really to take it apart. And it's a learning process. And the whole idea of owning our own car is that if we get it wrong or something goes wrong on the car, it's our car. We haven't got a problem with a customer trying to ring up and explain why we've broken something. And we did, various bits we learned from the process. But taking it down to a bare tub, building it back up again, and then doing that twice, which took a few weeks, we learned so much about the car and what we can do with it. It means the next time someone says, where does that fit, how does that work, we can tell them exactly why. And the process starts from there. And then we start going through in terms of power, start looking at brakes, suspension, all the things that we can and can't do, going through the service regimes, what can be done, and then literally the process ongoing. But we work on the car for nearly 2 years before we actually started offering our services to customers. It took that long to learn the process so we can go back and say, look, we are experts in this. And we had a meeting with McLaren, which was quite interesting. They came to see us and they were dismissive. They said, well, your technicians, they're young. They how experience they have. And I said in the meeting, I said, look, I've got 2 technicians here, okay? Let's jump on your car now. Let's drive down to Woking and let's get a car and you tell 2 of your best technicians you've got are working and 2 of my guys who can strip a car down to a tub and back together again the fastest and the most accurate. I'll stand my guys next to your guys known to man. Didn't have the offer come through, but it shut them up for the meeting. The process always for us starting off is looking at what we could do in terms of exhausts. The reason why we go for exhaust is because, without being unfair to manufacturers, is the bit they cut the costs on most. The average buyer, even for supercar level, only really cares about the last 4 inches they can see at the back of the car. The rest they don't really care about. So most manufacturers tend to downplay this and they save costs. McLaren no different. Exhausts are very nice, but in the day, the sound of the 12Cs and all the McLaren has always been a weak point. And as a custom exhaust manufacturer, we've been building custom exhausts in-house for 10 years. For us, it's always a first point of call to look at it. So for us, the case was take it all apart, look at the cats, look at the quality, look at the fixtures and fittings and how it all does, and then literally come up with the first 3 or 4 versions that actually improve them. Now, it was quite easy on the 12C, frankly, because depending on a Spider or a Coupe, they had different levels of absorption boxes and resonating boxes at the back. First thing we do is basically straight through it, take it from the cats all the way straight out the back, get rid of all that back pressure, but also more importantly, put an equaliser pipe in them. You can't just separate out a V8, you have to balance the exhaust gas at the end, mainly down to firing cycle on the cylinders. And to be honest, we made 2 or 3 designs of that process, haven't changed it since. It makes a lovely noise, unlocks a decent amount of power, even as a cat back, and sounds great as a car, which even for a turbocharged car is pretty good. After exhaust normally comes mapping, which we have done on the 12C and have done on the McLarens, and there's huge amounts of power to be gained. The downside is you can't dyno them. McLaren refused to release a diagnostic equipment that allows them to put in dyno mode, so you can't dyno the car without going to a dealer and borrowing their equipment, which amazingly don't lend out very often. So for us, the mapping side has been kept to one side because we won't release a product to a customer unless I can make sure on a dyno it's perfectly safe. I can replicate a dyno on the road, obviously, but that means driving up and down the M40 at 200 miles an hour in 7th gear. Not a very sensible way to release a product or a way of driving a customer's car. So for us at the moment, mapping is something we'll release when we can dyno the cars. Other aspects of it, we normally look at suspension and give McLaren their credit. We couldn't better it. Okay, we can make it better on track, but as a road car with an emphasis on sporty driving, give McLaren the credit. It's an awesome setup. The 12C 650s with the active suspension is something that really, from our perspective, we'd be tweaking around the areas, around the edges. It's a fantastic system, so we've done nothing with it. We've put lowering springs on them, and frankly, whilst they're better on the handling side, they compromise the ride so much we don't really recommend them, and you get other problems. Because obviously the 12Cs and 650s, all the super series cars, is an interlinked system. The suspension is linked with steering, linked with all kinds of things. So it's one of those ones that we try and steer clear of, unless there's a problem, which obviously we can fix it from there. Widening out the track is something we were very keen to do. The 12C is a narrow track than the 675 LT that obviously followed it. So we came up with a spacer kit, which is specifically designed for the car to widen out the track to a 675. Now, you can buy kits off eBay, etc., but McLaren are very specific hob offset and a very specific flange point they've put on the hob to make it very difficult to put a standard flange on, a standard spacer on. So we had to come up with our own one. We had to machine out the inside face to make sure I gave exact 12mm wide pattern on it, still making sure the wheel was fitted onto the hub, not fitted onto the spacer, as you can see. So it took a lot of engineering to do it. It means expensive because obviously the market's not really big for this kind of product, but it means obviously you have to do a proper job at it. And then if we give a absolute benefit from it, the benefit for wider spaces and kits is the handling is dramatically improved. We're round the corner from us, which technically speaking is our little racetrack as far as we're concerned. You know, the difference between space and non-space is nearly 9 miles an hour faster round this roundabout, holding a lateral G than we could before. Now we do the same thing on circuit and do testing, etc. But in terms of overall, it's a reasonably minor upgrade with no downside at all, and not a big expense either. So really, it's a combination of power, combination of handling. We upgraded the brakes. McLaren have a reasonably short history when it comes to carbon ceramic brakes. Porsche have been doing it for a long period of time. Ditto, even Lamborghini and Ferrari got not too bad on the carbon ceramic brakes. The problem with McLaren is they're quite early on in the game. And the fact of life is their carbons don't last very long, especially on track. And so really our car was specified with steels. Also the 650, you can specify steels but come with carbon ceramics. The problem you got is you take the car on track, the carbons won't last very long. Steel's actually a better bet. So we changed around and changed an upgraded pad with a Pagid RS29 to run on steels, or the RSC1, which is what goes on their carbon ceramic pads. Makes a dramatic difference to braking. Half the price of McLaren dealership price in terms of pads. Lasts for ages, graded better on track. No difference in terms of ABS or programming setup, etc. And then we did some bodywork. Changed some of the parts for carbon fibre parts, air brakes, side intakes, that kind of stuff, etc. Mainly because MSO wanted £17,000 for an air brake and we can make them for 5 or 6, so there's a bit of difference in price. But most of our specialising is on the engineering side, on the mechanical side. One of the best ones we've done, and one that affected us personally, I've got to say, was the clips. This is now almost folklore in the McLaren world. For some reason, McLaren decided to specify the clips to hold all the hoses together, as in the coolant hose, etc., with the cheapest clip known to man, you know, sub-pennies amount, which means they break, they snap, or they slide off. I personally, in the car, I took a trip to Le Mans, and one of my clips snapped off in the Le Mans car park, and I had to recover that and fix it back up. We came back from there and replaced every single clip on that hose clip on the car. It's about 9 hours worth of work. It's not insignificant. It's about 18 clips. We replaced them all with Motorsport specification Jubilees, which basically is a little ridge inside that grips the pipe. Means no problems at all fantastic. So we do a lot of cars for cars who will come in for a hose clip change. I mean, it's a bit depressing of a £200,000 car when the failure basis on our clip is worth pennies. Difference being obviously a Motorsport specification hose clip clamp is about £1.20 each. So it's only 20 quid a car, but it's enough to make an issue if you're building thousands, I guess. But that was one of the crucial things we did. And the final thing was geometries. We haven't yet seen a car come out of the factory that was straight. There's supposed to be geometries that come out in the quality control, and I'm sure they do a very good job, but they're very easy to knock out. And again, we learnt this in the VX220. You hit even an average sized pothole, I guarantee it will knock the tail or camber out on one of the front or rear wheels straight away. So we advise owners now that every year adjust the geometries just to make sure they're straight. And then 9 times out of 10, the customer come in, they think, well, is it going to make a difference? And the first thing I get is a phone call when they get home going, my God, it's a different car. Yeah, it's not exactly an upgrade. It's about making it straight again. And we adjust a little bit more toe, a bit more camber here. It's not huge amounts you can do. But it's all about fine-tuning the car for what the customer wants. So really it covers, you know, the handling, the brakes, the aesthetics, the power, all of those above. Then finally servicing. You know, if you want to buy oil from a McLaren dealer, it's going to cost you 120 quid. You can buy the same oil, same specification, same manufacturer online for 62. You know, it's just obvious stuff to share with customers to say that owning and running the cars is not an expensive thing to do. Well, thinking about the cars, we saw your video discussing about how much you can lose on the car, primarily in depreciation from a new car. And we agree entirely with you in terms of, you know, the marketplace for brand new McLarens and what they do in the aftermarket. But inherently in terms of the cars themselves, our view is diametrically opposite. They are stunningly reliable cars. These are not nails. These are not money pits which you'll be shelling money at in terms of a car. Granted, the first person who buys it is going to tank 40, 50 grand, going to come resale, no matter how many months they hold it for. But in terms of other than that, they're not money pits. Now, there are some specific things to look for. Gearbox leaks, for example, issues with the hose clips I've mentioned about, replace them, etc. Oil leaks from turbo feed pipes, water leaks from water pumps. These are all fairly common little things that are reasonably easy to spot, and for the most part are not dramatically expensive to replace, other than the gearbox. So these are things that you can pick up on inspection, ideally on a ramp, because you can see most of these things for inspection, and look at what needs to be done. For example, a water pump, you're looking at about £700 to replace it. It's not a huge amount of labour. The pump is a prone item to fail. It's quite obvious when it's failed because obviously it's water coming out of it. It's not complicated, and it's not a desperately expensive fix to go for on a £150,000 car. The gearbox is an issue. Fortunately, after now, we're 5-6 years into the cycle, it's becoming less and less an issue. But we still see cars every week where we do have the dreaded gearbox leak. Now, the good thing about gearbox leaks, they're again easy to spot. The problem with the 12C 650 is there's two different kinds of leaks. One is a leak where from the breather. Some 12Cs have a breather pipe and a catch tank fitted, some do not. I can't even tell you which years do or don't, because I've got cars with the three build models apart on the line. One has a catch tank, one doesn't. We think it's now a supply issue. If Mclaren had them on the shelf, they got fitted. If they didn't, then they weren't fitted. Ours, for example, has one fitted. We had the car in that was one number down from this one, didn't have one. 2013 plate 12C, so who can tell? The issue is if it has a catch tank fitted, great. If you have a leak and it comes from the side telltale hole, which you can see visibly, it means that that's the dreaded seal where the input shaft bearings have failed and the shaft has failed. Gearbox needs rebuilding. There's no middle ground for it. If the gearbox doesn't have a catch tank and it's leaking from the top, it's simply down to a breather. McLaren's stated position, and this applies to all 650s, is that some breathing is acceptable. Now, we've seen cars come back from big European trips and they're literally pouring oil out the top. As far as McLaren is concerned, that's acceptable. We don't quite agree, but the such a light is, as long as you're not losing too much and make a difference in terms of gearbox itself, it shouldn't be something to worry about. But it still means a pool of gearbox oil in your under tray, not a sensible thing generally. Gearboxes wise, obviously, is very difficult. McLaren are somewhat restrictive about how they allow it. We came up with a solution to fix it with a gearbox manufacturer. They were then subsequently told by McLaren's lawyers not to do it, so we had to build our own one. So we then engineered our own our shaft seals, and our own input shaft with new bearings, rebuild it so as good as new with a 12-month warranty. The difference is that we charge £9,500, including VAT, to have a complete gearbox change, whereas McLaren wants £17,000 just for the gearbox. So, big difference in savings. So again, you see some people buying cars, they're saying, oh, I've got a gearbox and it costs me 20 grand. No, it won't. Other problems there, they're not major. They really aren't. You're talking hundreds of pounds into the single thousands. I'm not talking about mega thousands. We've been doing this now for 5 years now in terms of McLarens. I've never seen an engine let go. Not one. I've heard of 4, 2 which are race engines on track, one done in Germany on Autobahn at a high-speed test. Haven't seen any more than that. I've heard of heads going porous or cracked, again manufacturing covered under warranty, but in terms of a engine failure due to operational non-abuse type scenario, I don't know of one, and I certainly haven't seen one. Now that's good enough evidence for us to some extent to suggest that look, these engines aren't poor. Again, this goes down to the history of the engine. You know, it's a NASCAR engine. You know, it wasn't built for it's a Group C engine. It wasn't built for a road car. It was built for a high-end, normally aspirated race car with a mega budget. We know as a normally aspirated, this engine, in its original configuration with Walkinshaw had it, was 900 horsepower. That's no turbos. That means suddenly running at 700 horsepower with turbos means it's not overly stressed. So from our perspective, the engines are strong. We back this. Our view is such that we're so impressed with the cars and what they can do, we run our own warranty now. We do an inspection on the car. It costs £2,850, and we cover the car exactly bumper to bumper for literally half the money that other people are charging. And there's not a reason we're into trying to make some kind of huge statement for the marketplace. That £2,850 is a very specific number. It's based on what we think will go wrong with a car over a 12-month period. So it's designed really to recognise what the car, how good they are. And if I can make a profit on £2,850 on a warranty because I know the cars are strong enough to withstand that, that's a good statement to say that maybe the cars aren't quite these money pits as people say they're going to be. The thing to consider about the McLarens, obviously, these are reasonably high-end vehicles, and they're reasonably sophisticated, and therefore buying any kind of car that's, any amount of money, it's worthwhile getting inspected. Doesn't have to be us. We offer an inspection service. It's $199 to get inspected, but generally speaking, a good inspection before you buy it is a sensible thing to do. Because most of the problems that you can find on a car are reasonably evident. They're not something you have to dig things around. What we recommend is have a look at the car, get it on a ramp. Putting a ramp can be quite complicated. Some garages don't know how to put a car on a ramp, which is something we'll cover. But what we're going to try and do later on is do a buyer's guide for the sort of thing that people looking at trying to buy a 12C or a 650 or a Sport Series, for that matter, or even 720, look for the problems that are likely to be there. Find out what to look for. Because if I say to you you've got a leaking gearbox, we'll show you what to look for. If we say there's a problem with lower arm, etc., again, with the buyer's guide, we'll show you how to look for the process and what to expect and the kind of symptoms it will generate and also the kind of costs it could generate. We keep every part we've used on our car. And it's not a big pile of parts. In 5 years of ownership, we haven't thrown money at it. It gets used on track. It's very well looked after. But the fact of life is we are not throwing money at these things as some of the warranty claims or some of the things you hear in the marketplace. Well, that's the end of this report. I hope you found it useful. The intention was really to get across that these are not horrible cars and going to fall apart. They are very good cars. They are enormously reliable. You know what to look for. Get a good one, you'll be happy as Larry. Some of the stories of what you lose money in terms of depreciation we can't control, and there's some aspects we can't do much about, such as Mclaren not releasing the diagnostic equipment for us to work on them in terms of service lights, but that's all in hand. Bottom line is they're worth looking at and they're worth inspecting. If you need to have got any advice about it, or contact us, or like I said, look online. There's more information coming out. There's definitely something to consider.